You're listening to Listen More with Paige Crystal Wilcox. This is a podcast where I listen to people from around the world who offer insights and reflections about what they'd like to see less and more of in character depictions similar to themselves. Something that's very important for this podcast is to allow each guest to take back the power of their labels and their own story by allowing them to introduce themselves. So could you please introduce yourself to our audience?
Definitely, Paige. First of all, thank you so much for inviting me to your podcast. It means a lot. Hello, my name is Dakshima Haputhanthri. I'm originally from Sri Lanka, now saying hello from Canada, Alberta. I wear many hats. I used to be a lawyer back home, Sri Lanka. Now I am a social worker, a youth worker, BIPOC, and LGBTQ2S plus advocate. I'm really passionate about mental health, and all in all, I'm a storyteller. I try to tell a story, my intersectional story. As I said, I wear many hats. I belong to different categories, different groups of people. So I try to understand the nuances, try to navigate the systems, and try to support people who don't have a voice. Because I was one of them not too long ago, so I don't want them to suffer in silence in whatever struggles they are in.
Fantastic work that you do. I really appreciate that not everyone has the strength to stand up and fight. It's always fantastic to see the people who are making that effort to make that change that we really need in the world. With regard to media representation, and I appreciate your many different hats, and you can choose to talk about just a few of them or all of them. Do you feel that you are represented in stories that exist today in media?
That's a good question. So I'm a South Asian woman, and when media represent South Asian people in general, they don't really talk about their struggles in details, I would think, because not every person's struggle is the same, especially, let's say, if we talk about mental health. It's taboo in many immigrant cultures, especially South Asia, especially my personal experiences. It is not something that we taught growing up. When you are having a bad day, that's all right. But when you're having some sort of struggle, you are supposed to grin and bear it and fight it. My parents are lovely people. They are really supportive, but that's my experience. A couple of examples. I never really realized I'm a queer person. I'm a lesbian when I was young, because there was no role model, or there was nothing that I could really read or figure it out. When I was 16, I read a book called The Funny Boy. It's by Shyam Selvadori. He's a Canadian, Sri Lankan writer, Sri Lankan first, then Canadian writer. And I read it when I was 16 at British Council Library. So I was privileged enough to go and read that. And I was like, okay, this is different. This is the first time I was like, okay, there is something. And then when my first girlfriend left me in school, I was going through a really tough time, and I was self-harming. I couldn't really talk to people because there's no support, or there was no role model or representation, as you said, that I could just draw myself and say, hey, this person did this, can I get that help or something like that? So I didn't have that. And when my second girlfriend left me, I tried to kill myself because I didn't have that support. Because if you're a woman of a certain age and certain privileged class, I would think I'm an upper middle class family. So you have education, you have the social status and everything, and then you're expected to marry somebody and have kids and grandkids and all that. So I didn't have any sort of person I could get that support from. So my personal experience, as I said, I don't want to put everything in one sort of silo and say, this is what it is. This is the truth. But personally, I don't think we've been properly portrayed in the media, or it's starting to look brighter. I would think people are rebellious, and people are like talking about intersectionality, and people are talking about how, these things affect people's lives and things like that, but not really, no. when I was growing up, at least.
So you've spoken about how this affected you and your perception of your experience. Do you feel that that lack of representation also affected the people in your life in terms of how they related to you?
I think so, because I believe when a woman is attracted to woman, that is definitely considered as a taboo in Sri Lankan society and is a criminal offense on top of it. According to Section 365 of the Criminal Procedure Code, Penal Code of Sri Lanka, correction, that it was prohibited, and you basically go to jail for 10 to, I can't even remember, over 10 years. So that really affects my, like if I'm starting a relationship, and I'm sure the first couple of people were experimenting what does this look like, and bisexuality is not tolerated as well. Maybe they're bisexual. I had no idea. All I know was I had somebody and they left. That's all I understood. And I think so. I think my life could have been different and more. I could have been still in Sri Lanka, not in a safe haven like Canada, if my life did not have those obstacles that I had to face.
Do you feel that there's been a change in the stories that you would have liked that would have helped you as a child versus the stories that you would like to see now?
Yeah, definitely. When I was a kid, the books I read or the dramas or movies I saw, there was always, there's a knight in shining armor or a prince or a king they come and help this poor, self, this delicate princess from some, I don't know, random dragon or something. But, that, so I always felt that there's this feminine, there's feminine side of things, that they were delicate. Whereas I'm not like that. And I'm like, who am I? I'm not this girl who would like pink dresses and play with those. I never played with those in my life. On the other hand, my sister, she always loved those, always have this, this nail coloring or whatever you call it. I don't know. So she's just this total polar opposite to me. So, and when I was like growing up, when I started to learn English properly, because English is my second language, and when I started going to British Council, and then I explored the whole world of different world where, as I said, I read about the gay boy, which was really new to me. And then when I came to Canada, I saw more of that. Orange is the New Black, the representation of women in jail system, trans. I mean, those were really new experiences to me, because unless and until you know something, you are ignorant. You have no idea what it is unless you see it, read it, feel it, understand it. So definitely my childhood would have been much, I think, I would have been more exposed to things. I had to learn everything when I was older. So yeah, I think I guess I don't see anything wrong in it. I guess there's a time to everything. Yeah, I hope I answered your question without going into a labyrinth.
No, that's good. I always appreciate when people go into a little bit more detail because it really gives you more insight into the complexity of representation and how it has an impact on us throughout our lives. Are there specific stories that you think you would like to see or read?
For instance, a woman saving the world, like Wonder Woman. Now we have that, right? I mean, that was like so late. Like same-sex relationship, a trans person supporting a town and getting that appreciation, things like that. I would never see that. I don't think that I'll see that for the next 100 years in South Asian countries, because they are so adamant on holding on to these traditions, which I appreciate. We all need tradition because the future is based on the past. I appreciate that, but you need to move forward and you need to reconcile, the wrongs and right them and move forward in life. So yeah, definitely.
Does sound like you'd like to see more positive stories and really positive stories about diversity. And something that I think we have seen a lot is a lot of tragic stories and a lot of the pain, which is definitely a common experience that a lot of us have. But do you think we still need more of those stories exploring the pain?
Well, pain is part of life, and I mean, suffering is actually a choice. We tend to go on about it, but I think women are women in general. I'm talking about because I'm more give would like to give that power back to women because people portray women in most stories as fragile, as somebody who will be waiting to be saved or waiting to be what's the word, that you are not strong enough, not resilient, like, but women are caregivers, women are rulers of the world has changed right now, and I think that sort of that needs to be told. I was always, even as a child myself, I'm very strong in my opinions, and I've seen some people, for instance, going through domestic abuse. Like I have friends who are lawyers, who are psychologists, who are mental health therapists going through these things, even in Canada, back in Sri Lanka, and I cannot believe that, because you are supposed to, like, if you're a lawyer, if you're a therapist, you would think the society sort of assume that they have, like, they can stand on their feet, they can fight their fight, they can help others, but we need to sort of explore that pain to understand why it is happening. So pain is really important, but you should not give in to pain, because then you would lose hope, because without hope there's no life, I would think. Like we go to sleep every day, we put our alarms in our phones or whatever, so we hope for tomorrow, we hope that we'll get up tomorrow. I mean, such an unbelievable thing, isn't it? Like, what would happen if I die tonight? You know what I mean? So we really want hope in our life to move forward. So I want pain to be told, yes, but should be coupled with hope. There is always hope.
Really love that. And I definitely would like to see more of the stories that do include the pain, but also give hope and aren't just a tragedy. For writers or filmmakers who would like to tell these stories, do you have any advice for them about how they might go about adequate research?
I think the first and foremost they should be like talk to these people, because my life journey is different from somebody else, but there would be similarities that they can use it. But unless we hear from them firsthand, we can't assume this is what their life is. Because if somebody look at my story, my life, unless you ask, there are so many nuances, so many hidden layers. As I mentioned before, you record like ogres. There's layers like that, hidden underneath, deep layers, things I won't really share unless somebody asks. I am very vocal about my mental health, and also, you know, support and suicide and all those things, because I want to normalize those things. Unless you ask, I'm unlike, if that person is like me, they would not share those things. So your story would be incomplete. So you don't want that. So I think just having that relationship with those people, really sit down, listen, not just listen and making notes, actively listening. Listen to those words that they are not saying, underline hidden words, facial expressions. There's so many things, hiding in plain sight.
We're starting to get towards the end of the episode now. Are there any final words, or is there a takeaway that you would like to share with the audience now?
But when I was having these experiences, my personal experience, that people leave, I thought there's something wrong with me. Unless I realized there's nothing wrong with me. This is who I am. It gave me power. I was able to take my life back, take my power back, can be this resilient person as much as I try to be. I'm not perfect. I have such flaws, but I try to be as much authentic to myself as possible. I try to be what you see is what you get. I try to be that guiding light to people who don't have a lamp or candle or at least a match. I think that's the takeaway, that if you can't be like a huge light that in stadiums you have those flashlights that sort of bombard you. But if you can't be that, just be a little flickering light to somebody's, that matters to them. That's my sort of final sort of advice, or wise word.
Thank you so much for that. That is a beautiful way to end the episode. I really appreciate you taking the time to help our audience build that deeper understanding of why it is necessary for us to do better in media representation. And I'm excited about what we will see over the next 5 to 10 years. Obviously, in different countries, on different continents, it's going to be different. Things are moving at a different pace. But I do feel that overall, we're heading in the right direction. So thank you so much for being a part of that.
Appreciate it. Thank you so much again, Paige, for inviting me. It's a pleasure.
You've been listening to Listen More with Paige Crystal Wilcox. If you or someone you know would like to be a guest on this podcast, head to my website, paigecrystalwilcox.com. And don't forget to share and subscribe.